my co-founder is the tall blonde man there, my brother, who is the inspiration for this business. Andrew is in the middle, and my lovely mother is on the bottom left. And we started this business because my brother Andrew while he's super capable, we saw very little opportunity for him to lead a full and independent life, a life full of close relationships, a career he felt valued in, and the income he needed to pursue his hobbies because he's diagnosed with autism. And I'll get into kind of what we believe the root causes of this issue, of the unemployment issue, is in a minute. But we knew we needed to take action. And we've been doing this now for about 3 years. We founded Rising Tide Car Wash in Parkland, Florida in 2013. And instead of just kind of talking through this business model, we want to show you a quick video that'll make it a lot more real for you. Employees follow processes. They're really excited to be here.
How many cars do we need on tonight?
They have a great eye for detail. We view autism as one of our key competitive advantages. My name is Tom Diaria. And I'm the COO of Rising Tide Car Wash. Andrew's my younger brother by about 18 months. We found out Andrew has autism when he was about 3 years old. Growing up with Andrew as a brother, it was just different. We never really fought. We also, though, never had the closeness that typically siblings that are so close in age would have.
Chips and goldfish. Both, right? What else did you have for lunch?
I don't want him to sit in a room taken care of by others once I'm gone. I want him to have a life. I want him to have a job. I want him to have friends that are like him. So this car wash, it creates an answer for Andrew and also creates an answer for their mom, who's taken care of him and done all the heavy lifting. Where are the reinforcements? She's done all the work. Okay? So, that's hard.
What we find in the autism community is that once someone turns 22 and ages out of the school system, there's very little of any meaningful activity. In the autism community, we call that falling off the cliffs. Typically, people with autism are really good at structured tasks, following processes, attention to detail. So we saw that there are really important skills that people with autism have that make them, in some cases, the best employees you could have.
What video are we going to do this weekend?
Hopefully over 1,000. They come to us with very little purpose and very little hope for their future. That cat store just open up on you?
Yes, it did.
But once they start working with us and they start to get the positive reinforcement of doing a good job, customer being happy, them getting a tip, that really starts to open them up.
Yeah, it did kind of open up home.
And they start to be able to think about what they might be able to do with their lives, whether that be stick with us or go do something that is more closely aligned with whatever their aspirations are.
Oh, you come to work tomorrow? Help me?
Tomorrow?
Like on Thursday and a morning shift?
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't have a choice then.
We've seen a lot of really great improvements as far as my closeness with him and his desire to have social interactions and social relationships.
Andrew, you take passenger, time money. You take driver, okay? Melvin's gonna check.
I'll give him orders just like I would give any employee an order. And yeah, he'll roll his eyes at me or not be too thrilled about it, but I feel like that's a normal interaction between a younger brother being told by his boss and his older brother what to do. So that's it's really great.
I'm gonna be 24 and
And Dad and Tom are the owners of the watch.
How do you like working with them?
I like working with them a lot.
We wanted to try to identify a consumer business that could educate the broad community around how capable people with autism really are. The car wash, at its best, is very well structured. Every part of the business is a process. And it's a really tangible service. You're going to see, oh, wow, these guys did a great job. Oh, hey, all these guys have autism. Okay, you start to fill in the blanks. And hopefully we can change that perception.
Okay, so that's a great video that's been shared over 30 million times on Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to swing that back out, and I'm going to leave the chat box here so everybody can continue to say where they're from. It seems like it's a great interactive tool as we go on.
Yeah, so that right there you saw kind of the end product where we currently are as an organization, and just to kind of highlight the important points again, we are a flex service car wash, which we've identified through our research in a process that will identify later in this presentation that that's the best business model for what we're trying to do for right now. We are a for-profit business model specifically because, as alluded to in that video, we believe the key reason why there's about 80% unemployment among individuals with autism is that we as a society look at autism as a disability that requires sympathy instead of potentially really valuable diversity. And we feel that the best way to disprove that and to change that perception is to build a competitive advantage, and we feel that that needs to be done through a for-profit business model. 80% of our staff is on the autism spectrum, which is about 35 individuals with autism today. We turned out a struggling car wash that was only washing about 2,700 cars a month, one that is now washed over 14,600 cars in its best month and is averaging somewhere around 14,000 a month, and we are operating at a profit. From an impact perspective, we've trained about 125 individuals with autism to date. We've hired about 85. We've paid out over $650,000 in wages. And of those employees that we've had, 16 have moved on to new jobs or higher education. We have, and admittedly, probably need to do a better job tracking where people are going after they're working with us. A lot of folks have moved out of the area, and a lot of folks we've lost track of. So those are 16 individuals that we know specifically where they've moved. And about 75% of our employees are showing significant improvement in their self and social confidence, which we're doing by third-party interviews on a semi-annual basis. So we've built a successful organization, but why are we doing this? Why are we here on this webinar? Why are we hopefully going to be producing a lot more tools and support services for aspiring autism entrepreneurs like yourself? And it's pretty simple. We believe that we need a critical mass of successful autism entrepreneurs to prove the capability of individuals with autism. We want to inspire a movement, a grassroots movement of autism entrepreneurs to tell that story and prove the capabilities that so many individuals with autism have. So again, what we've found through our research and through talking and meeting so many individuals with autism and talking to so many business leaders is that fundamentally autism is looked at as a disability that requires sympathy instead of a potentially really valuable diversity. We know that this is a perception issue because there's a ton of data, and anybody who works with individuals with autism can probably attest that they have tremendous skills. Many have an excellent eye for detail, are great at process-driven tasks, as well as have a real enthusiasm for work. The thing is that businesses don't understand this for the most part. It's really hard to convince a business owner or an HR professional who depends on the success of their employees to hire someone who fundamentally they believe is inferior in that job because they have a disability. So in order to change that, we need folks like you. We need more stories like ours to really influence this majority. So what you see here on this slide is an adoption curve. So this is the way essentially ideas diffuse to become mainstream ideas. And in order to get to that mainstream business segment, which we believe would be the segment that will eventually solve this issue, because that's where most of the jobs are, we need a critical mass of early adopters and innovators, which are your entrepreneurs and people who are willing to dedicate their lives to proving the capabilities of people with autism, and then your entrepreneurs within forward-thinking organizations that are able to use those examples to get buy-in within their organizations. And at that point, you'll have enough data and enough really strong evidence to get the mainstream to move. The great news is that you're not alone. You're not the only ones that are trying to do this. We're not the only ones that are trying to do this. At our feet right now, there is a groundswell of enthusiasm from the autism community in trying to do these things, and people are starting to take action. So right here, we have two entrepreneurs that we've worked with in our workshops in Miami-Dade and Broward County, Florida. They're Valerie Hershkowitz and her son Blake, who are in the picture on the left-hand side. Valerie started Chocolate Spectrum, wasn't an entrepreneur, wasn't a professional chocolatier. Making chocolate was certainly a hobby, but that was not her job. She's in fact a very well-respected speech pathologist, but she knew she had to act in order to provide her son with the life that he deserved. So she founded Chocolate Spectrum out of her kitchen, not, with just an idea, really, and slowly but surely she's moved to the point now where she's doing enough business, and they just moved into a retail space. They're providing training services as well as selling their chocolate to help other individuals with autism become chocolatiers, and as well as typical people, and to be a community gathering place through events. And on your left-hand side here, on your right-hand side here, you see Sylvia Alpanis-Prats, who is the founder of Miami is Kind, a new organization, but an organization I feel like you'll hear a lot about over the next year or so. They started with 2 employees last year. They've now gotten to 4, and they make macaroons and are actually at the moment looking to do a GoFundMe campaign to raise some funding to build the capacity to employ 2 more people. So I would really encourage that you look at both of these folks as role models, and hopefully you see yourself in them, just like we do, and they inspire you to action. So before we get into the specific skill sets, there is one mindset adjustment that I really want to point out. And as we see that a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with are parents, though I do believe that this applies to other loved ones as well as people who are providing services to individuals with autism, in that we generally look at our loved ones with autism with a different view than we would need to as an entrepreneur. So as a parent, you're typically solely focused on your child's happiness. You're really proud of your child's skills unconditionally. You just want them to be happy and to do what they love, and those wants and desires come before everything else. As a parent entrepreneur, that mindset has to be brought to a kind of a new level of understanding. So going from being solely focused on a child's happiness to understanding that their child will be most happy in their lives if you build a sustainable organization through a successful business that then creates a long-lasting job and a community for your child. Going beyond looking at your child's interests and digging deep into what the skills are that underlie those interests. So we'll use the example of my brother. My brother, when he was growing up, really wanted to be a museum curator. He loves the Museum of Natural History in New York. He memorized all of the tour guide scripts. He knew every aspect, every wing of that building. He knew the schedule of all the tours. That was something he really wanted to do. So we could have looked at it and said, hey, great, let's make a tour guide business for Andrew when, to be a museum curator typically requires a master's degree. Andrew's IQ is under 70, so that probably wasn't something that was in the cards for him. But instead, we looked at, okay, well, what are the skills that come with that interest? And he's got a great memory, he's got a great eye for detail, he's got a great eye for structuring. So let's build a business that encompasses structure, a consistent environment, and a consistent process. And then finally, accepting that building a business isn't all idealistic. There will be challenges, there will be sacrifices that you'll need to make going through this process. Every entrepreneur starts with this vision of perfect in their head that once it leaves paper and goes to the real world, it never is what you would have fully hoped. So understanding that that's part of the process and being willing to make those sacrifices for that greater good, for building a sustainable, profitable business, as that is the primary goal, because everything else flows from that. That's the frame. That's the mindset. We really hope that you look at the rest of this stuff through. So we're now going to introduce some key topics that we feel are really important on starting this entrepreneurial journey. The first one that we're going to introduce is the use research process. That is the process that we use to start Rising Tide Car Wash and to really get at the key truths behind what we were trying to do and gain clarity on what we were trying to do as we're starting up. So we break this down into 3 different types of research. There's user research, so observing observing the community, getting to know the problem you're trying to solve, and getting out into the community, turning unknowns into knowns. Interviewing stakeholders, so on and so forth, those are all topics there. Then secondary research, that's going online, doing your homework, reading everything you can to get a macro level view of the current resources that are available, the best practices that are out there, and identifying people who you could potentially collaborate with. And then expert research to ground what you're finding independently. So before I get into the specific tactics of executing part of this research process, the framework that we really recommend you look at going to market with is doing what works. So most businesses, when they start up, they're innovating a new business model, trying to bring a new service to market that doesn't exist. So normally the biggest assumption, the riskiest thing that they're doing is around their business model. You and we as autism entrepreneurs have a huge advantage in this, in that we don't have to find new business models. Rather, we need to identify existing business models, existing proven business models, where we can design systems to employ people with autism in, because our innovation is how do you employ people with autism within a successful business model, and that's your differentiator. So, as you're going through this process, we strongly encourage that you look for existing proven business models instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. So the first part of the use research process is the user research, and that's going to be starting with really gaining clarity on the problem you're trying to solve. So the old saying here that when you know one person with autism, you only know one person with autism holds significant wisdom when you're trying to build a business around people with autism, because the spectrum is so wide, the skills are so varying, that you need to really get out of your own idea of what autism is that you've gained through your child or your small group of individuals with autism that you know, and get a a broader sense of the community. So that's going out into classrooms, observing, going to job sites, going with job coaches to their different job sites, going to community groups, getting involved in the social activities, and then interviewing individuals with autism as well as the other key stakeholders, so service providers, other parents, other concerned citizens, to really get an idea of what the specific problems that you're trying to solve are. So from there, you're going to map actually what's available and try to identify who you can collaborate with. So this kind of process of getting out into the community, getting to know people with autism, getting clarity on how you can solve this issue, and getting then to figure out who you can collaborate with. This is like the first steps. So here are some key questions. I'm going to breeze through these. If you want to see these after, the slides will be available. So what are the key skills that people in your community possess? And how is the community currently dealing with it? And then who can you collaborate with? So now the second half of user research is going to be with the business, on the business side. So when you're building a business to employ people with autism, it's a really classic example of a dual-sided business model. So we're both trying to solve a problem for individuals with autism through employment, as well as trying to solve a market need, which is the business model. So we just went over the how do you identify the problems and design the solutions for people with autism. The next side is how do you weave that into a valuable business model. So the first thing, after you now have identified, okay, maybe these are some business ideas that I would like to do, would be getting out and talking to customers of those businesses. Again, our recommendation to you is that you go and identify businesses that are currently successful business models and proven business models. And then so going and finding people who are avid users of that service and identifying what the key value propositions are. Can you guys hear me all right now? Okay, awesome. So getting out and understanding what the key value propositions are for the customers of the service you're trying to provide. So for the car wash, right, it's speed, quality, price, and convenience. Those are why people go to the car wash typically. Employing people with autism is an added layer to that value proposition in that now people feel that they're doing something good for their community by patroning that business, which is a competitive advantage. But first you want to understand what are the fundamental value propositions. Next is then talking to people who live this, people who are currently operating in this business model, to understand where people with autism might fit, right? So even going and talking to someone who's an experienced operator, explaining what people with autism are really good at, and then seeing if maybe they can vision some ideas as where people with autism could be successful in it within that business model is a great way to start. And lastly, I really can't stress this one enough. This is something that I wish we'd have done more of as we were starting. But if you can either yourself or a member of your team go and work in an existing, in the business, being whether it be a car wash, a dry cleaner, or a laundromat or something like that, actually going and spending a few months working there is extremely, extremely valuable. We did a proof of concept. We worked at an existing car wash, and that gave us a lot of insight. But actually immersing yourself as an employee of an existing car wash, I really can't, or an existing business, I really can't stress how important that is. So again, these are the questions that I just went through. And now next slide is...
Okay, so that was great, and that's the, in the whole framework of this, that's of the use research, getting that user feedback. Now we're going to go into the secondary research, which is a good ancillary tool as you're going through this whole process. So you're going to want to educate yourself with secondary research and identify risks and opportunities by synthesizing existing research that's already been done, that's already out there. You're going to read everything you can about the industry that you want to get involved in, what the market outlook looks like, what the actual offering of services within that industry is, and see how you can connect the dots with the strengths of individuals with autism and the processes and job function of that prospective business. So collect as much secondary data as possible until you feel comfortable that you have a good relevant sample of findings. This type of research is generally quicker and easier to collect than the primary research part, where you're setting interviews and you're doing surveys and things of that nature. Again, this is a great additional tool to affirm that primary data. Places that you can look in databases and external information sources. Internet search engines is typically where you're going to find most of this stuff. It's just important to make sure that you filter what's good and relevant information and what's not. So in the context of Rising Tide, they searched for everything they could about autism, employment, and the car wash industry to understand both. And in going through that process, trying to identify potential partners and mentors and best practices and risks and roadblocks. So after doing those first two, the user research and the secondary research, you're going to want to ground both of those, the research that you've done there, with expert research. You want to ground your findings and understand the landscape through conversations with industry experts. So we spoke with anyone in the autism world and the car wash industry who would listen to get their feedback on our ideas and learn about how the systems we're getting involved with work, and again, to identify potential partners. So these type of interviews with experts are great for answering why and how type questions to finding answers to complex issues. So this part of the research process will produce the most rich and insightful information, because you're picking somebody's brain who's in it and who's been there and who's been in your shoes before. So again, we can't stress enough, when you're going through this whole process, see where you can fill your knowledge gaps. So make sure that you're playing to your own strengths. And if you identify something where someone else might be better suited to do a certain task, make sure you can do what you can to bring that person on board or to help you out. And that brings us to our findings when we went through our research process.
Right. So essentially, these are the things that we found, and these are things that were really valuable truths that have guided us all the way through our iterations of our business till today. So as I keep harping on, and we really truly believe the root cause of the disability employment issue among people with autism is that it's viewed as a disability instead of a valuable diversity. That really guided a whole lot around our, what business model we chose, how we were going to grow the organization through things like we're doing with Rising Tide U, and so on and so forth. We identified the business model that we were going to start in, and not only the industry, but the specific business model being that flex service car wash through this research process. And then we identified, through the research, the specific partners that could help us get there. So UMNSU Card has been a huge player in helping us gain credibility in the community, as well as how to work with individuals with autism. And Sonny's Enterprises has helped us really learn the car wash business. So now this next section, I'm going to preface with talking about the way the media talks, kind of popularizes entrepreneurship as being this rugged individualist, somebody who can do it all on their own, that doesn't need any help, and frankly, that's not real. Every successful entrepreneur has mentors, partners, co-workers, colleagues, co-founders behind them, making them successful. So as you're going through this journey, immediately start to look to build that tribe. And be honest with yourself, know what you don't know. We were not experts in autism. We were not experts in car washing to start. So we went and we found people who were, to help us actually envision or make this vision a reality. So we're going to now talk through a a framework here of how to do that, how to build those mentor and investor relationships and partner relationships through a framework that's provided by Unreasonable Institute, which is a great organization that I highly recommend you check out that helps social entrepreneurs tackle the world's largest issues. So this framework is broken down into three parts. There's the build, which is what to do before a meeting, the strong, which is what to do during a meeting, and the friends, which is what to do after the meeting, coming together as the Build Strong Friends framework. So build, what to do before the meeting. The first two parts of this is really understanding what it is you need, being honest with yourself and what you need at that point to get to the next level of the business development, and then figuring out who you need to get there. So for us, like I said, we didn't really know much about autism besides our own relationship with Andrew and his friends. So we needed to find experts in autism. We were really transparent about that. We found Dr. Alessandri at UMNSU Card. We found James Emmett, who's a leading disability and employment consultant. We worked with them to better understand autism. Then we found a partner in Sonny's because we knew we didn't know the car wash industry, and they guided us through the process of starting a car wash. At that point, right now that you've identified the people that you want to work with, you have to incline them in your favor. So there's a few really great tips that you can use to try to do that. So the first thing and the most powerful way that you can get someone to like you before you've ever talked to them is to get introduced by someone who they know or they respect. So right away, there's a ton of value in building your network, building your tribe, going out and talking to as many people as you can, because the bigger your network is, the easier it becomes to find someone who then can make a connection to someone who you really need to talk with. If you don't have those connections and you're just starting out, another really great tool would be to create a really simple website. I'm not advocating at this point to go out and spend money on a website or build something fancy. There's great tools like Strikingly, as well as Instapage, where you can build really nice landing pages to get your idea across and look a lot more professional than just some random person that's reaching out to somebody who probably gets hundreds of emails a day. Then learn everything you can about them. So there's a few reasons as to why you really want to learn about someone before you get on the phone with them. First, fundamentally, we have a human need to feel valued. And if you go do the homework before you talk with them, and you then go and say all these great things that they've done and why you want to talk with them, that immediately makes them feel valued and much more apt to help you. The second reason is that it cuts out a lot of time in that probably finite conversation that you're having with them. Typically, that first conversation is only going to be about a half hour. So if you're going to only have a half hour and they're going to have to spend 10 or 15 minutes describing to you what they can do so you can figure out how they can help you, it's a really inefficient use of their time. And third, it helps you qualify whether or not this is actually the person that you want to speak with. And now the last thing in what to do before the meeting is doing all the work for them. And this is going to be recurring in actually each of the three steps in a little bit different ways, but essentially making it frictionless for them to help you. So before the meeting, that is saying specifically what you want to talk with them about and outlining specific times in their time zone when you want to talk with them and how you're going to get in touch with them. So, for instance, right, let's say we want to open a car wash in Lincoln, Nebraska. We don't know anything about Lincoln, Nebraska. We need to talk to a marketing person who does local marketing in Lincoln, Nebraska. We find the person. We say, hey, I need help with this concept, making it well known in Lincoln, Nebraska. I can talk at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Central Time, X, Y, and Z days. That makes it really easy for them to say, okay, yeah, I can speak at this time on this day, and that sounds like something I'd like to speak about. Making it very easy right from the gate. Now the next part is now you've gotten that meeting with the person. So the first thing, start that meeting, structuring your time with them. identifying within the first 2 minutes of the conversation why you're there to talk with them, how much of their time you want, and then kind of getting right into the meat of the conversation is really respecting their time very well. It also then leads right into the next part, which is treating them like the most important person in the world. So again, as a early stage entrepreneur, you may not have that much to offer them in ways of money or connections or really anything besides the fact that you really value them. And that is something that's of value. So making sure that you're not checking your cell phone, you're not doing little things where you're disrespecting them and not giving them your full attention is hugely important in these first meetings. Remembering yourself. So I know I do, and a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, when they get that meeting with somebody who can really help them, start to feel like they don't deserve the opportunity, or they're not worthy of this person's time, or they're going to look stupid in the conversation. It's really helpful, at least for me and for a lot of the folks I've met, to just remember that you're not there to necessarily change their perception. You're there to authentically talk about what you need and what you're trying to do, and let the chips fall where they may. The next part is offering the opportunity to be part of something big. So a lot of times when we're starting something, it is incredibly easy to get lost in the technical aspects of building the business and losing talking about that bigger picture. And frankly, that is probably the biggest thing you have to offer to somebody who's going to help you, is that they're giving them the opportunity to be part of something big, to change the way that we look at autism, to change the lives of specific people with autism. That's how you get them to really be on your team. Then naming the next step. So again, this is part of that, doing all the work for them, telling them specifically what you need from them, as well as specifically what you're going to do. And then give whatever you can, whether that be simply thanks, or whether that be, maybe you found out in the conversation that they're huge Dodgers fans and you have it in with somebody who has season tickets and getting them tickets, or maybe they just love chocolate and you send them chocolates or something like that. You don't have to force this, but if there is a way for you to give back value, you constantly want to be looking for that. And now what to do after the meeting. So this is a lot of repetitive compared to what I just said, but I'm just going to touch the finer points. First, follow up fast. Follow up within the 24 hours of speaking with them. I will say that is really what separates a really good entrepreneur from someone who's all talk, is in that they're actually following through on what they're saying they're going to do. So do that immediately. Then now I'm just going to hit one more point here, which is sending email templates. So when you're reaching out to these people, again, doing all the work for them, let's say that you spoke with them and they can introduce you to the executive director of Autism Speaks, who is someone who can really help you get your model off the ground, or maybe can provide funding or whatever. Instead of asking them to write a description of who you are, how they can help you, naming times and stuff, and really producing a lot of cognitive load for that person to help you, you're going to send them an email with exactly what you want, that all they have to do is forward it along to their contact, turning a 30-minute ordeal and a lot of cognitive load into no cognitive load in 30 seconds. So we're going to move on from this at this point. We got 17 minutes left, and we want to have a lot of time for questions, so we're going to get into our last part.
All right, great. So I'm sure everybody that's attending right now that's starting a business is probably feeling a wide variety of emotions. Some of you might be eager and excited and hopeful, and some of you might be overwhelmed and scared and having some self-doubts. Some of you might be feeling all those things at the same time. That's all perfectly normal. When you're starting a business and a business that employs adults with autism, it's no easy task. Just understanding these emotions and the role that they play in entrepreneurship is key to actually being able to get your idea off the ground, and that's kind of what we're going to go into here. We're going to key in on the emotion of fear as it definitely plays a very significant role in entrepreneurship. Everybody experiences fear, and human brains are simply wired for fear. The thing is, our brains can't tell the difference between something called a healthy fear and a barrier fear. And a healthy fear is something that overcomes us when our flight or fight response is triggered, where we are overcome with stress in our body. We tense up, we become very alert, and in general, our body just speeds up. Like when we're being chased by cheetahs, it's rational and it's a normal fear for our bodies to produce that type of stress to be able to run the hell away and not be eaten. On the contrary, a barrier fear is one that just lives inside of our heads. We experience it even when we're not in imminent danger. So our bodies can produce that same type of chemical response, that flight or flight response, when we're, say, about to do public speaking in front of a large audience. And the fear that we experience when we're starting a business is no different. The thing is, you just need to acknowledge and distinguish what type of fear that you have. So it could be a healthy fear, like financially risking all of your money to start a business while you're raising kids. Or it could be a barrier fear, so something like fearing the unknown or fearing failure. That latter is what we're focusing on. We're certainly not telling you to take equity out of your home to start a business if you're not financially able to do so. We're focusing on those barrier fears that cause inaction when you're trying to pursue your entrepreneurial idea. So what type of fear do you have? Is it a limiting fear where you're afraid of what other people might think, or you're fearful or worrying about the unknowns? Are you afraid of failure? Again, these type of fears could be ones that are just living inside of your head, and the good news is we have some tools that you can use to overcome them. So if you find yourself feeling fear of uncertainty or fear of failure, map out all the possible outcomes that can happen when you're starting your business, including the worst case scenario, because that's important. Once you consider that worst case scenario, it should make it a lot less scary than when it's just an idea and it's just unknown. Also, have a plan B. This should help in boosting your self-confidence, as you'll have another viable option to fall back on if things don't go the way that you originally planned. Next, we're going to say don't waste your energy on something that ultimately doesn't benefit you, and we're going to talk about that in just one second. And finally, take the smallest step possible towards your goal so that the fear response is never triggered. And that's going to be a main topic that we hit on when we talk about Kaizen. So I'm going to read a quick quote about Adam Callinan, who says, "Don't waste your energy." He states, let's be straight. Nobody wants to fail, but not wanting to fail and fearing failure are not the same. One's an attitude and the other is a mindset. If you're truly fearful of failure, you're wasting needed energy on something that has no benefit. So take that energy and redirect it towards iterating your current processes or diversifying your revenue stream so that failure is less of an option. So to give a very quick example of that, Valerie from the Chocolate Spectrum, who we referenced earlier, is opening up her first retail location. And in doing so, she's diversifying her revenue stream by starting a chocolate training business. So again, she's giving herself less of an option for failure, as she has two different revenue lines now that she's going to be focusing on: retail chocolate sales and that training business. So now that's going to bring us to this topic of failure, and I'm gonna just go right into it. As the slide alludes, failure is success in progress, and this statement holds great truth. We're saying that the path to success is taken by experiencing failures along the way, and I think Thomas Edison said it brilliantly. He said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." So working towards this type of mindset will serve you greatly as you go through your journey. Having the ability to overcome adversity, reflect, learn, and then try again are some of the biggest differences from those that are successful and those that are not. So again, what we're trying to say here is that there's a lot of value in failure. When things don't go the way that you wished, ask yourself what you can learn from it and how it positions you going forward to have greater success in the future. So with that being said, there's smarter ways to fail than others. You can mitigate the risk of failure by spending the least amount of time resources, and money required to put out your concept idea into the market. So like this young man here is working with his chemist set, and it looks like he didn't do too well. Treat each opportunity as a test or as an experiment, because there's two big benefits from trying and failing quickly. Number one is that you can quickly figure out what's not working, and you can iterate it again to find a new solution that's better. And number two is that each failure lessens this thing just a little bit. So the quicker that you can kind of get to acclimated to this idea that not everything's going to work, the better. So we're going to use Rising Tide as a quick example. The organization started out by running a pilot program at a partner wash for a few weeks to see if employing adults with autism in a car wash concept would be possible, and seeing how customers responded to the idea before making this large financial investment in a car wash location. So here in doing this experiment or this pilot program, we're mitigating the risk of potentially a financial failure by testing that idea first. So now that brings us to Kaizen. So after speaking about emotion, the emotion of fear, and this idea of failure, and briefly some things that you can do to overcome each, we'll talk about this concept of Kaizen. That's kind of a great tool in bringing it all together. The concept translates roughly to good change or continuous improvement, and it's a productivity philosophy that helps organize everything that you do into actionable steps. So it means constant, continuous improvement and taking small steps that will ultimately lead to big results in accomplishing your goals. So big goals at first can seem overwhelming and scary, like when you're about to climb a mountain. It can seem impossible from your current vantage point, and it could be terrifying to think about all the moving parts at once and how you're going to be successful. But when you break that down into smaller, actionable steps, something like jumping over a little paper towel roll, it's not as scary. And these examples are obviously extreme, but I think they illustrate the point pretty well. The idea of taking small steps and setting small goals is pretty profound. It makes it easier to overcome that fear response that's triggered from setting big goals, such as taking the entrepreneurial leap and starting a business. So rather than thinking about this goal as a large undertaking, understand that in reality it's a series of much smaller steps that's going to get you to where you want to be. So failure and fear can be very frustrating and paralyzing if you let it. So again, try and view these opportunities as a chance to learn instead of something like screwing up. And you're bound to feel more confident as you go forward and the next time that you do it. So if we totally bomb this presentation, let us know and we'll refine it and put on a better one going forward, because again, this is an experiment. We're seeing if this is a good way of disseminating curriculum, and if it's not, we'll go back and we'll tweak it and we'll do it again. So here we have a proven process known as PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act. And this process breaks down those big goals into smaller steps, again, in order not to trigger that fear response that might live in our head, or not to experience the inertia from thinking about failure. So you're going to start with plan, and plan is going to be plan that smallest goal that you're looking to try or to test. And this could be at the most basic or the most granular level as possible. Try and take that small baby step towards your goal. So if your goal is to try to find potential partners or mentors, start by planning the smallest thing possible that you feel comfortable with. Something like that could be planning to do a little background research on successful people in your industry, planning to make a LinkedIn connection, planning on sending an email to introduce yourself and your business concept. After you plan it out, you're going to go out and carry out that small test. That goal that you planned should have been so small and so comfortable that you should have no problem doing it, so that your fear shouldn't be a factor. So click send on that email that you planned on writing out, or click connect on that LinkedIn connection that you wanted to connect with. And then what you're going to do after that is you're going to observe and learn from the outcomes of doing that. Did you get a response? Did that connection accept your request? Did you realize that maybe it wasn't so scary at all? After observing, you're going to determine what modifications you might need to make to yield a better result next time. So if you didn't connect or get an email response, think about what you can do differently to get a different result. Or if you did, what can you do to take that next small step and that next small step? Because you're going to repeat this process over and over. So that next step could be, if you made a connection, having a phone conversation with that person or planning a lunch meeting. And you're going to repeat. So again, these small actionable steps over time will yield big results. Constantly working on your craft and doing what you can to make improvements to yourself and your business without setting off that fear alarm or experiencing the inertia from thinking about failure will set you apart from those that are successful and those that are not. And this, we're going to kind of move this a little bit quicker. This book, Good to Great, kind of just illustrates that point that taking small steps were what pushed companies that were average into that next level into great companies. And you can read that quote on your own if you'd like. And as you're going through the process, just remember to remember your purpose and why you started doing this in the first place. Because being resilient is going to be very important in doing this, and your purpose is going to be very important when you're going through trials and tribulations. So this concludes the topics part of our presentation. We'd like to let you know that you can visit our website, risingtideu.com, if you like what you heard today, or you want to stay in the know about new exclusive content. We'd also love to hear your feedback on this presentation, so you can drop us a line on there. We'd love to hear from you. Now, if anybody would like to stay for questions, I'll end the recording and we can bring the chat box over again. So to everybody else, thank you so much for attending. We'll conclude with a quote from Unreasonable Group. The world's greatest challenges will never be solved by one person, one team, or one entity. We must work together to move far and to move fast. So thank you.
Great, guys. So just by reading the chat box as we've been going, there's been a few recurring themes that I can address quickly, and then we can move into new questions and